The vampire is a monster that has captured the imagination and fear of many. A blood-sucking creature that only comes out at night to feast on any poor soul that comes across them. Or some sparkling pale pretty boy who stalks a girl with no personality and has a rivalry with a shirtless indigenous werewolf. But the most famous of all the vampires is Dracula. Ever since the release of Bram Stoker's Dracula in 1897, Dracula has become a part of pop culture, what everyone thinks of when they think of vampires. Actors such as Bela Lugosi, Christopher Lee, and Gary Oldman have all brought the character to life. Hell, I'll give Carlos Villarreal some credit as well, and has appeared in other genres such as action, comedy, and blaxploitation, and has appeared in other mediums such as comics, video games, and cartoons, and has inspired other famous vampires such as the Count from Sesame Street or Count Orlok from Nosferatu. Yeah, despite what pop culture says, the vampire from Nosferatu is not named Nosferatu, but Count Orlok. In fact, the vampire's name was originally supposed to be Dracula, but due to copyright they had to change the name. Either way, Dracula will be there to suck your blood.
Oh, see, that's a myth. Dracula scrape with his fangs and lick up the blood. Like this. See? Scrape and lick.
Fun fact, that's actually how vampire bats drink blood. The more you know. However, many tend to overlook the fact that Dracula was actually a real person. Not as the vampire that we know him as, but as a brutal tyrant who ruled his homeland. Here we talk about Vlad Dracula, or better known as Vlad the Impaler. But who was this man, and how did he change from one of history's most feared rulers to the vampiric monster that we see today? Vlad Dracula, or Vlad Tepes, or Vlad III, was born in 1428 or 1431, depending on your source, in Sugarswara, Transylvania, which is now part of modern-day Romania. His father was Vlad Dracula, or Vlad II, who became part of royalty after joining the Order of the Dragons, which is a really badass name right there, like something out of a fantasy book, which was created by the Holy Roman Emperor Sigismund of Luxembourg, in order to protect Christianity by combating the advancements and conquest of the Muslim Ottoman Empire, which is now part of modern-day Turkey. In 1436, Dracula's family moved to Wallachia, where his father would rule over the land, but his father would be overthrown by one of his rivals in 1442. Wanting the throne back, Dracula's father would pledge his loyalty to the Ottomans. However, this would lead to a double cross, and the Ottomans would end up taking his family as prisoners. The Ottomans did agree to help Vlad II, but in exchange, he must leave his sons Dracula and his younger brother Radu to the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, Murad II. Yeah, basically Dracula's father just sold him and his brother into slavery just so he can get back his kingdom. What a shitty dad. Because Radu was so young, around 4 or 5 years old, it was easier for him to cooperate with the Ottomans, even converted to Islam. But Dracula, who was beginning to go in his teen years, was rather rebellious and not so pleasant to be around. He would be a troublemaker, which would lead to many beatings and punishments. However, Vlad II would go on to betray the Ottomans by supporting the Christian kingdoms in Poland and Hungary, but would end up going back to the Ottomans, promising them yearly tributes. Jeez, this guy is not loyal. And because of this disloyalty, this did not go well with those said Christian kingdoms. They were retaliated by not just executing Vlad II, but his oldest son, Mircea, in 1447. And the throne of Wallachia was taken over by Vladislav II, who was supported by the Christian Hungarians. Dracula, seeing an opportunity, would lead a campaign to take his rightful place on the throne. Dracula would ally himself with the Ottomans and managed to take back Wallachia and became its ruler. For 2 months. You see, while Dracula was taking over Wallachia, Vladislav was away fighting the Ottomans. And when he came back, you can imagine he was pissed that someone took his throne while he was gone and threw Dracula out of Wallachia. So for the next 8 years, Dracula would wander throughout the Balkans planning for his revenge. It is here where Dracula would betray the Ottomans and make a deal with John Hunyadi, who was the governor of Hungary. Dracula offered his services to Hungarians in exchange for them letting him take Wallachia. Fun fact, John Hunyadi here was the one who killed Dracula's father and his brother and helped Vladislav take the throne. Man, no one is loyal here. In 1456, Dracula would lead a force supported by the Hungarians and killing Vladislav, plus taking back the throne. And this is where his brutal reputation begins. When Dracula came back into power, one of the first things he would do was stop paying taxes and tributes to the Ottomans, which was one of the very few things keeping the peace between the two nations. Basically, it was one big screw you to them. Next, he would invite all his rivals to a feast. These were a group of boyars, which for those who don't know, a boyar is basically another royal title in Old Eastern Europe. Basically the equivalent to, say, dukes or noblemen. The thing is, these boyars were the ones who killed Dracula's father and older brother, and he wanted revenge. Now, you would think going to the dinner party of the guy whose family you murdered would be a terrible idea, but these guys went anyway, and they all paid with their stupidity. When all their guards were down, Dracula would have them all stabbed, but not to the point of death. He wanted to send a message. He would then have their bodies put on spikes where they would suffer for days, dying a slow and painful death. Because of this action, Vlad Dracula will be given the title of Vlad the Impaler. This will be one of many impalings, as it was one of Dracula's favorite methods of execution. He would then go on to impale foreign allies of the boyars he killed, and even impaled a group of Ottoman envoys. It didn't matter who you were, if you pissed Dracula off, you were going to be impaled. With the invention of the printing press, stories of Dracula's atrocities spread across Europe. After sending back the Ottoman delegates in various forms of dismemberment in 1462, the Ottomans, led by Sultan Mehmed II, attacked Wallachia, which, for those who don't know, Mehmed II was best known for the conquest of Constantinople, now modern-day Istanbul, in 1453, which would officially bring an end to the Eastern Roman Empire. So this was a guy you didn't want to mess with. Quick tangent, in recent years there's been rumors that Dracula and Mehmed were childhood friends thanks to media such as Dracula Untold and Rise of Empires, the Ottoman, which are the majority of the clips that you've been seeing throughout this video. But I couldn't find any evidence of this during my research. Anyone who is more of an expert on Balkan history during this time period, please try to clarify this with me in the comments. Did this actually happen, or is this Hollywood making stuff up to do the whole best friends to enemies trope that we've been seeing a lot in popular media? In June 1462, Dracula's forces would attack the Ottomans at the Battle of Târgoviște. During the battle, Dracula tried to kill the Sultan but failed, with the battle ending in a draw. Mehmed II was ready to attack again, however, he would make a terrible discovery of 20,000 Ottomans impaled. The Ottomans were horrified by this action that there was talk of retreating. Well, not without burning a Wallachian town first as revenge for what happened. While that was going on, Dracula was planning to make his next move until he was betrayed and imprisoned by the Hungarians who accused him of working with the Ottomans. I know I keep saying this, but seriously, loyalty does not mean anything to these people. So when Dracula disposed, the Ottomans end up taking over Wallachia, in which they appoint Dracula's estranged younger brother Radu to the throne. However, Radu's rule wasn't that easy, as he still had to fight forces that were loyal to Dracula, as many saw him as a traitor and a puppet to the Ottomans. Not to mention, he still had to face rival kingdoms in the area. And in January 1475, Radu would end up dying due to unknown causes. My theory is that it's from the amount of stress that he was under. Seizing on opportunity, Stefan III, or Stefan the Great, the Prince of Moldova, requested that Dracula be released by the Hungarians and put under his care. You see, 20 years earlier, Dracula helped Stefan take over Moldova. In fact, some historians state that the two are cousins. So to return the favor, Stefan helped Dracula take back Wallachia. You know what? It's finally nice to see that there's some loyalty among these royal types. Though if you do look up Stefan III, he is just as shitty as the rest of them. It was kind of a I scratch your back, you scratch mine kind of thing. So in June 1475, Dracula would return to ruling Wallachia, however it wouldn't last long. As in December 1476, he was leading his troops in battle where he'd be ambushed by the Ottomans, where he would end up being killed during the battle. However, this isn't the end of that. You see, the Ottomans would slice up Dracula's body and send his head to Sultan Mehmed II. And then the Sultan would show off Dracula's severed head to the public, as proof of their victory and as a reminder to anyone what happens when you cross the Ottoman Empire, thus truly ending the story of Vlad the Impaler. So that was the story of the real Dracula. So you may be asking, how did Bram Stoker get the idea for what would become the most famous vampire from Vlad the Impaler, since he's rather different from the one most people are familiar with? Well, depending on your source, the answers are rather anticlimactic. Some sources say that Stoker was researching Romanian history and found out about Vlad Dracula, and thought that his actions would be perfect for the blood-sucking monster. And even the Count's name was originally going to be Count Vampire. Which sounds rather dumb, but knowing how some European languages go, the W would have had more of a V sound, thus making it sound like Count Vampire. Which is a little too on the nose, so I can see why it was changed to Dracula. Others say that Stoker just skimmed through a Romanian history book and just saw Dracula and didn't do much research on the actual man. Overall, Bram Stoker created a legend that overshadowed the actual Dracula himself. In recent years, there have been many interpretations that say that the vampire Dracula and the human one are the same person, with some stories saying he made a deal with evil forces to become the monster we know him as, or him just being a straight up vampire from the beginning. Even in modern day Romania, Vlad Dracula is seen as an icon, being viewed as a cruel but fair leader and the one who defended Christianity against the invading Muslim Ottoman Turks. This is rather ironic since Christian symbols such as the cross and holy water are one of the vampire Dracula's weaknesses. But which one do you prefer, the brutal tyrant or the blood-sucking monster?
Didn't you just hear Dracula explain the scrape and lick? Dracula gonna tell it again for dummies that don't pay attention.